I think we've got all the cameras working. Okay, so hello, my name is Uchi, and tonight we're working on a guide for Kid Dracula, the JP version for Game Boy. The plan is to give a run through of what I've done in my speedrun, and also in general what you could do if you're looking at speedrunning this game as well. So we'll look at some simple strategies and some of the ones that I've implemented as well. If you're looking for some extra resources, if you go to the speedrun.com boards and you look up Kid Dracula, having a look at some of the runs on there will certainly help, especially some of the other top runs like Loch Madana's, Starve and Struthers. There's also a video on tasvideos.org, tool-assisted speedrun. It is for the US version, but some of the strategies are just as viable for the JP version. Massive control. Yeah, it is. It's a bit of a massive area. Well, actually, that's one of the things as well with so I use controller for my run. I'm not sure. I'm very sure. I could be wrong, but I'm very sure Locke uses keyboard with his. So you can use keyboard or controller if you're playing on emulator. To be honest, I use controller in my runs, but I also used keyboard in practice and testing. But let's get this loaded up. Provided our control's going to work. Okay, so we get to our title screen, and time starts when we push start on the first option. So we also want the first option, which is basically start a new game. The lower option is basically sort of like it's your password option, or continuation from a certain point. So we'll just start. These scenes you can just skip by hitting the start button. Movement in general is the same as a lot of other games. So D-pad, to move, which we might as well demonstrate. Okay. So we can go up and down ladders as well when we get to them. A for jump, B for our projectile. If we hold down B, we charge up our sub-weapon ability, and release we can fire it. And our one other button, which will be important for the run, will be our select button, which will change our sub-weapon option, which is in the bottom left of the screen. So at the moment it's on normal in Japanese, so nomoru, and then our other option is komori, which is our bat. We have two abilities to begin with. As we progress through levels, Kid Dracula is going to learn more abilities as we go along. So compared to the Nintendo version of Kid Dracula in the Nintendo version tends to fire projectiles a lot lower from standing position. So you could do the trick of doing A/B. So it's almost pressing the two buttons together. In fact, with the Game Boy version, you can practically press the two buttons together to do a jump attack. Because of the height our projectile gets fired at when we do this, you can see with that slight delay between A and B, we end up firing our projectile a lot higher. So you can get about a head height projectile if you press both buttons together pretty much at the same time. So you can see, based on the coffin in the background, how high they fire. But we've got a nice little friendly feature with this game where we can fire the projectile lower. Instead of doing a jump attack, so jump fire, we can do the reverse. We can do a fire jump. So just after we fire our ability, we can jump and get movement. We don't lose too much. We don't lose too many frames compared to trying to walk and fire. So you can see there's that pause in animation if we're trying to move forward. But we can minimize that by doing an attack and jumping. And you can see we start to fire that projectile a bit lower in comparison to the height of the coffin in the background. That type of attack will also be very friendly with some manipulation later on in the game. Now we've got a general idea of what we're doing with our attacks and our abilities. We'll get into the gameplay with the first stage. So we're going to have a few enemies that we need to attack first up, as well as getting past some crushers. So there's one. Sometimes you just got to pause slightly for the crushers. We'll have another enemy just here. So we'll do again our attack jump, and we can do a jump attack there. And that's the end of the first screen. The next screen is going to be the important section. So going into the next screen, we'll want to buffer our attack. So we're going to buffer attack. Going to jump on the ladder. Jump. Okay, so jump to avoid the projectile. So provided you don't bonk into the floor above you, if you just jump straight onto the ladder and climb up, you should be able to avoid the projectile from the knight. And we can release our attack to take him out. After we take him out, we want to switch to our bat ability, have this charged up, and we want to jump on the ladder to make our way up to the next bit. And then we'll look at how high we need to jump. So height of the next jump before we activate our bat ability is going to be very important. So we switch, get to here, okay. And there's going to be a platform above. So I'll jump up to show the height of the platform. There's our platform right there. So we're aiming for this platform up here. We don't want to show this whole platform to begin with. We only want to show about half of the height of that platform when we jump up. If we move too high, the knight that's standing on top of that platform is going to start in motion. So we don't want him to start to move until we've transformed into a bat, and we're showing half, probably at the most half. You might be able to show a little bit more, but roughly half of the height of that platform. So we'll go back and do that again. So jump, hit that, switch. There we go, and that's actually probably the maximum height that we can have with that platform right there. So then all we need to do is move up through the gap on the left. And we're through. And then we want to hit the B button again to shift out of our transformation. And as we climb the ladder, we'll want to hit select to go back to normal. So there's a little bit to do to begin with. But what I might demonstrate, I'll demonstrate very quickly what happens if we transform too early. So go to there. Okay, we move up, and then we're going to get hit with a projectile because that enemy's already in motion as we've changed into a bat. So we want to avoid doing that. Jump, climb. There, a little bit of platform. That's fine. You can even press select if you wanted to. I mean, you can press B or you can press select. Either is fine. I think I normally press select, so then I can get ready to. Charge up my next shot. Okay, so we're going to be on normal attack. The next plan in this room. So this room's a little bit, got a little bit more to it to begin with. We want to jump on the platform to the right, jump up to the left, and then there'll be another platform that we jump up to the left on the left. We can land on that as we land on that third platform that we're jumping onto, we will release our projectile, firing our projectile directly upwards, or so we can either land on there and fire it upwards, or we can just before we land on there, we can release the projectile so it goes straight up. Okay, switch to buffer, jump, release, and you can see as we jump up, we just we follow the camera up. So we're just following the camera up as we see it hit the take out the knight, and then we can just complete the room. Climb the ladder, we just go straight to the right. If you wanted to the left of this screen, there is a health pickup. If you need to get more health as part of the run early on, there will be more opportunities to be able to pick up extra health containers as we go along. So even though Kid Drac has 3 heart containers, he can have a maximum of 5. Okay, so then going into this screen, again, we want to buffer an attack. Nice little challenge here is to when jumping on this first ladder, to see if you can jump and get Kid Drac's head to go slightly up into the gap. So that way he's got a little bit less height to climb up. If you end up bonking your head on the floor above, it's not an issue at the end of the day. You can continue climbing up. You'll have time to make the rotation to take out the Frankenstein creature. When we go into the next room, we do want to make sure that we buffer, that we charge our attack, because we'll be able to use this to take out the first creature that we come across. So we'll load that up again. So we're still on normal. So I bonked there, but that's fine. And we're going to go to the right. And there's a couple of ways that we can do this. Move underneath the bats. Okay, so we can use our charged attack to be able to take out the creature. Again, if your timing is really good, I think you can do this optimally with the keyboard. You don't have to jump to be in a position to fire down with your attack. So moving above the creature and holding down while you release your projectile. You can, if you want to, so you can try to fire it straight ahead. It is a little bit risky. Sometimes the attack goes over its head. But at least then for the next creature, because it only takes one hit in this version, you can just do you can do your attack jump and hold down the attack button to buffer, and then we can use that projectile to take out that third creature. And then we come up to the next platform area. So at this point, we'll then want to switch to our bat, which we'll do right there. Jump on the ladder. So it's up to you if you want to take out that enemy. There is a risk you can take with jumping the enemy if you've got a good rotation and try to grab the ladder up high. It doesn't save a lot of time. Probably more ideal to take out this enemy, and then as you transition into the next room, hold down B again to buffer your ability. And there are a couple of options we can use. So this is the option that I use. I'll show another option that we can use as well to get through the next section. So there are two options. Okay, so and if we jump too high, we miss the ladder. So get to there. So what I normally do, just get here, transform, fly a little bit higher, and that'll take us into our next section. The other option that I've seen other people use, and I'm not sure if the Taz uses it as well. I can't remember if the Taz uses it, but if it doesn't, I remember it may have been mentioned on the forums. You can use your normal ability to take out the Frankenstein creature, quickly switch back to bat, and then buffer that to get across. The one thing you want to make sure that you don't do, and actually this would be a great opportunity to demonstrate this, you don't want to change your sub-weapon ability too early, especially while it's mid-projectile, because as soon as you change it, whatever projectiles you had on the screen will disappear. So if you had a projectile that you were hoping was going to nuke an enemy and you switched too early, that projectile you fired will be gone. So we can fire, switch too early, it's gone. So we want to make sure that we don't do that. Okay, so we get to here. And then we just got to... So either way, there's got to be that little period of transition into a bat and out of a bat. We don't use this ability too often, but that's our other option of taking out that creature. But usually what I do instead is switch back. I'll just buffer the transformation, go across, just take the damage, and we go through. Okay, now the next bit is going to be all about seesaws. So we will encounter some of Kid Drac's fastest movement in this game, apart from maybe riding some roller coasters and elevators. So we'll do a delayed attack as we jump. And then we're going to run down the slope of the seesaw. And And some of these jumps, you want to hold a full jump, so that way you get you get all the way to the top of the next seesaw as you make your way across it. Try not to leave the jump too late, because otherwise it is very easy to fall off the end of the seesaw. That happened to be a few times in attempts. Not that often, but it's irritating when it does happen. Going into the next section, which will lead us up to the boss, having at least two hearts of health will be fine. One heart container of health, you should be okay. Just got to watch out for phase 3 of the boss fight. And all we need to do now is hold left. Make sure we switch back to our normal sub-weapon. And we're into the boss area. Our boss is going to be in 3 phases. We have the Spirits of Halloween. So it's almost like a junior phase, a parent phase, and a grandparent phase. Ideally, we want to take out the first 2 during their first jump. All right. So when we spawn the little Spirit of Halloween, what we're going to do is we're going to buffer an attack. All that he needs is 1.5 hits, so 1 charged up attack, and then 1 small projectile. And yeah, we'll show how that works. So we can stand there, fire up, and as you can see, we want to do that before he goes into a second jump. If that spirit goes into a second jump, you can easily lose 3 to 4 seconds. He takes 1.5 hits. The next one is going to take 2.5 hits. We want to stand roughly there. 1, 2. And you have enough time to be able to hit them as they come down. By the way, that symbol on its head is a bungee, which is an Eastern symbol, which is meant to represent a long period of time, usually something like 10,000 years. Just in case you thought it might have been something else. If you don't deliver enough attacks in time, might as well show what happens if you don't get the attacks in. So we get those 2, then oops, we missed. We then have to dodge projectiles. And then we'll start to chase after us and start to jump again. So that's pretty much the gist of what goes on in this fight. Okay, so now we're up to phase 3, which is the Grandpa phase. Grandpa is going to be immune to all damage. We can't hit Grandpa, but Grandpa can still hit us. All you need to do is avoid him. Avoid Grandpa. Don't worry about using bat form. Just jump him, or if you want to, stay on the left side of the screen and just take a hit. And anyway, Grandpa will exhaust himself. Alright, so again we go into a cutscene for phase 2. We can skip this. And then we learn about our next ability. We don't get to use this weapon as often, but we might as well have a look at it to see what it does. So it's an arcing ability. We won't have use for it in the next stage, but we will in stage 3. Now, the next bit, we come up to the minigame section. We want to get through this section as fast as possible. So we'll be mashing the A button to get through this menu. And for those that read Japanese, there will be a key bit of text to keep an eye out for. So when I've run this, there's been one little bit of text I've always kept an eye out for. If you can't read Japanese, you might recognize the shape of the characters. So we skip the first bit. Konnichiwa, Dracula-kun. Okay, and then we skip the next bit. Then there's a description about the coins. We skip that one. So this bit. So this is the bit of text that I always keep an eye out for. The site Jumai yeah, so saite jumai hitsuyoyo. So I just look out for the saite bit, which is that first little bit of text right there. Okay, so as soon as I see that, when I get to the next screen, I'm going to hit A twice, and then after that, I'm going to be menuing down. You don't want to be mashing A here because otherwise you will go into a mini game, and it's very easy to lose a run just by mashing at that point. So AA, so we just hit that very quickly twice. Down, we go to our option, nani moranai, and we just hit A again. And that'll take us to our next screen. We can just mash start to get through that bit. So for level 2, we are going to have 3 screens that we encounter. So we're going to have a ladder screen, we'll then have a flower press screen, and we'll finish up with a waterfall screen. Go jump there, jump and attack. Okay, it's our sequence to the top. Jump across, fire down. So we'll go back over what we just did. So to begin with, we'll jump immediately onto this ladder. Climb up. Then we'll jump and attack. And then we're just going to jump to the right. That owl will normally not come up, but then we'll just jump up to the ladder there. And then from here, we're going to jump straight up. And this jump can be a little bit tricky to begin with. Make sure you do a full jump, hold the up arrow, and pretty much when you get to the peak of the jump, once you release the A button, you can just climb the ladder, and that'll take you the rest of the way. One mistake that I made early on was not allowing Dracula to jump to his full height. Or I was holding the A button down for too long. So if you're holding down the A button while you're on a ladder and you're trying to climb a ladder, you will immediately fall off it. So you won't be able to climb that ladder at all. You don't need to worry about the health to the side there. The only way you can get to that health is by transforming into a bat. We don't want to do that because that's going to cost time. But if you wanted to, if you were a little bit unsure about health, you could always transform and then pick that up. If you get eaten by a tree, you go back to the very bottom of the stage, as we'll demonstrate right here. So we're back to or we go down another section. Yeah, instead of snakes and ladders, we've got trees and ladders. Okay, we won't normally take out that enemy. You could if you wanted to jump onto that ledge, but then the tree on the right will activate its suction ability, which can take a little bit of time. So ideally, you just want to jump straight onto the ladder. So when we get to here, small jump to there. Try to avoid jumping too far to the right if you can, so that way when you jump onto this final ladder, you won't get sucked down by the tree on the right side. Okay, so get too close like so. You have that pull back. That's not going to work in your favor. Which will slow Kid Drac up a little bit. But yeah, we just want to get straight into the ladder, straight to the top, and then jump and a downward attack. If you're not comfortable with doing a downward attack, you could just do a standing attack to the right from the ladder. I probably wouldn't suggest doing an attack jump. Because chances are you might end up falling through the gap or getting a bit close to the edge. So that's going to bring us up to our second section, which I call the flower press, and this is where we want to use our attack jump ability. We'll show a standard way of how we could do this. So we can just be firing like so. So we could just be walking across like that. But as you can see, we're having to duck some enemies there. So duck the bird. And we're safely across. But it's a little bit slow because we're having to pause every time to fire our projectile. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to do a combination of a jump, an attack jump ability, and then on the way back down fire another projectile. So we end up getting into a fluent motion. So we want to try to do this immediately. Get another one there, and then we'll do 2 standing ones there. And we continue this momentum. This will take... So that will take a bit of practice. It won't always be the most fluent. Chances are you might bump into an enemy. You might end up getting caught up a little bit. You might notice that getting too close to the beetles in the middle. Those couple of beetles that wait in the trees above. You could get hit by an owl. You might have a projectile that goes over the top of the flower. You could even possibly have an owl. Now, the one thing that we don't want to have happen, we don't want the owl to land on top of a flower. Because if the owl lands on top of a flower, we then have to take out the owl. And if we don't take out the owl will end up killing the flower, which is not good because we want to push these flowers across to create these platforms to get across. If the top flower dies, you can use the second flower. We don't have to do that though because it is a little bit of a steeper jump to make, and we certainly don't want an owl taking out the second flower either. But as part of a speed run, that's usually not too much of an issue, not too much of a worry. We'll get to the third screen now, which will be the waterfall section. So going onto the waterfall, we've got several logs that we need to jump across. There'll be some darker logs that will fall when we land on them. There are 3 things that we need to watch out for in particular. 2 logs that are going to fall off a waterfall, and a fish that we need to kill on the way in between. So let's get straight into the movement. So make a jump there. That log's going to fall. We jump. We can walk underneath. Now this one. So that log can sometimes be one of the trickiest things to pass to begin with, and chances are you may still bump into it as part of a run. The high log, we want to do a small enough jump to get on top. So then when we walk off the edge, we can then just, as soon as we land, just essentially bounce jump across. So just tap the A button and it should allow us to bounce across. If we jump a little bit too high, that log from the waterfall can start to fall in motion, which means when we go to do our little bop jump from the second log, we can end up colliding with it. And if we jump a little bit too high with that bop jump from the lower log, even if we've got a good jump going to that second last log in the background, that can still allow us to collide. Okay, we can duck that fish and then bop jump. Okay, and we're safe. We can then walk past this fish, but the next fish we need to kill. And this one can sometimes provide a little bit of a hindrance. So let's continue on. So we're going to jump and fire an attack right there. So if the attack's too late, sometimes we can take damage from the fish before the projectiles had a chance to hit it. But either way, that's the second thing that we need to deal with. Jump into there, and another little bop jump, and we're safely across. And then after that, we just hold right to go across the rest of the screen. Little jump, little bop jump, and all that we need to do now is just walk across the rest of the way. We don't need to worry about these 3 fish. Don't worry about attacking them. Just continue straight across. So on to the boss. So onto our boss of Jason. So we'll cross another couple of bridges. All right, that axe will be significant in this fight. So there are 3 phases to this fight. The first phase will be Jason coming out of his house, out of his cabin. The second phase will be when he picks up his axe. And then the third phase will be the shotgun phase. So the easiest way I do it, I normally just do a standing charge attack, doing a jumping attack over the top. I'll take damage, but that's no big deal. And then just a small projectile to finish it off. Okay, so here we go. So give yourself some room. You can see I gave myself some room, just one charge shot into it, and then and after I fired that projectile, just held the button down immediately again to charge up another shot. Jumped over the top, did a downward release, so holding down while I released the projectile, and then after taking damage, just hit him a third time with a standard projectile in the back. So again, we're going to do the same thing from a distance, which will then chase him off into his cabin. So 1, 2, 3. That's all that there is to the first two phases. Then we'll have phase 3. We want to charge up a shot. This phase is going to be a little bit longer. He will take 3 fully charged hits and one standard shot, so 3.5 hits. And our positioning, we want to start off just here to the left of the doorway, because when Jason appears, he's going to jump onto the roof of his cabin, and then he's going to fire a shotgun, basically a split shot. So it goes off in. So you have 3 bullets that come out of the gun. We want to avoid that happening. So the simplest way to deal with the third phase of the fight is we're going to move underneath Jason and fire projectiles upwards. So as soon as we release a projectile, we get another charge, and as soon as we're flashing, we'll fire the next shot. Try not to fire too early, because there is the potential of having a charged shot that goes into iframes, and then Jason doesn't take the damage. So there's a little bit of a rhythm. There is a timing to this. So as I unpause, I'm just going to hold down B, and we'll do our 3.5 hits. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I actually did a 4th charge shot, but for your 4th shot, it can just be a standard projectile, and that ends up being the fight done. If you're a little bit slow, what can happen is, so 1, we're taking damage, and then as a result, we're out of sequence. Just get into the rhythm of it, and we get Jason cleared out of the way, and that fight is done. So the only thing we need to worry about now is the next screen. We get another ability. My bad. So we get homing missile. We don't use this ability, so we won't worry about this ability in this run, simply because it is too slow. So again, we hit start to get through the screen, and then tap A twice. Down, down. Do that real quick. Hit A again, and we're going to go into stage 3. For stage 3, we are going into the clouds. And going onto a roller coaster, as you might be able to see in the background just underneath Kid Drac there. So we're going to have clouds for the first part and a roller coaster for the second part. We'll break it down bit by bit to show what you can do. So let's go back to the beginning of the area. So we'll skip the first bird, but then coming up to this bit, we want to do a jump upward attack. When you pass underneath a witch, they will drop a projectile at you. So simply your attack is going to block the projectile. So once you've hit that projectile, we just keep going. We come up to this cloud. We're going to wait for this cloud to get roughly level with the next platform to our right, and that'll be a good time for us to make the jump across, like so. We can skip that bird. Probably the best thing to do for this bit with this bird is to do an attack jump. And then once this bird is taken out, we obviously didn't take it out, but then when we get to the witch, we'll then do a jump attack to take out the witch, which will then lead us up to our little platforms. The attack, jump there. There we go. So didn't have to take out the bird just then, the first one before the second one, but did anyway. Now we come up to the last part of the screen. We have two clouds here. Both of them are going to be descending clouds. So we jump into the first cloud. It's going to press down. We'll walk far enough to then jump onto the second cloud, which will progress down far enough. We then want to do a jump attack. So then the projectile we're firing doesn't hit the first witch, but hits the second witch. So we take out the second witch instead, because we'll have enough time to pass underneath the first witch, which is at the top of the screen, and the projectile won't hit us. We'll be able to jump onto the final cloud, which is going to be bouncing its way up the screen. And if we hold right, we should get a little speed boost that will take us to the end of this first section. Okay, so we jump to there, jump up, jump and fire. And that's the first section done. And now we will go on to the roller coaster. So going on to the roller coaster section, there's a little bit here and there that we can do with this. There's some interesting things in the TAS, in the US run, where there's a lot of jumping about. I don't really jump around too much. In fact, I think I ended up avoiding it a lot more as a result, because I had a feeling I might have been losing time. I'm not sure, but there are some sections here or there that can be optimized to save a little bit of further time. So we're still on normal weapon. We're not changing that to begin with. We'll just get onto the roller coaster, and our ride starts once we move far enough to the right side. We're going to take out a turtle there, and another one here. For the roller coaster section, if you're fairly new to the game, there's quite a bit to learn with the routine. I mean, as with any new game, you're learning how the routines work. But as you progress through this more and more, they'll become a lot more comfortable. You do pass certain checkpoints along the way, so if you fail on a section, you won't go back to the very beginning of the stage. So we're just going to do a couple of loop-de-loops, avoid birds. And we'll get to a checkpoint. And we're going to charge a shot, fire up, and fire across. The sooner you can get rid of those cloud enemies, the better. You don't really save too much time here, but it's possibly just that minor lag reduction yet again. It's one enemy that's out of the way. You don't have to worry about its projectiles. You're possibly going to save a bit of time in that section. So that's all that we have to begin with. So there's not too much more to it. Coin disappears. What we can do now is we can switch to our group bat attack, and this is going to be very important for a section coming up once we get past the next couple of loops. So this one will be for the right side. If you want to, you can jump on the second platform, jump to make Kid Drac disappear, maybe save a little bit of time. This one I like to take out that little spaceship at the top. Again, jump to have Kid Drac go off screen, and we're going to go into our next section. Okay, so we get the warning shots, and then we want to hit them with 3.5 shots. So sometimes it could take a little bit longer, especially if you're not willing to take damage. And this can have effect going into this section. So the sooner we can take out this enemy, the sooner we transition into the next bit where we have the birds flying across the screen, where we have the 5 birds. So that's usually roughly a standard way of that you can do that screen. If you were trying to avoid taking damage, sometimes what might happen is that cloud creature, after being on the right side, might go all the way to the left side and then come back the other way, so then we can hit it one more time. And that can start to cost seconds in a run. So what we can do instead is we can use this unique combination. Right. So we can take out the enemy really quickly with our bat ability. So we can get a charge shot when we get high enough on the slope. So normally I follow the structures underneath. We can get a jump. So if we get a high enough jump, we can then release the bat ability, which not only hits our enemy once, but can hit them a second time after iframes as we're coming back down and as the ability finishes. And then what we can do after that is we can fire an upwards projectile, which will be 2.5 hits, and all we need then is one more charged hit, which is what our bat assault ability, or our Totsugeki, can do as a result. And as you can see, that takes considerably less time rather than waiting for that enemy to drift right across the screen. But that's essentially our quick kill, and yes, it does save time. It was something that I did compare in practice and testing. So notice not to go too early. There we go. And then from there, just duck and go across this next section. And if we want to, we can load up our normal ability. Take out the turtles. You can either take out the turtles or duck them. So second turtle, bounce, past the bird, and then after this, we're going to jump onto our final carriage. Switch back to your... we want to switch back to our bat assault ability. And we'll be coming up to the boss. So what we're going to do for the boss, I'm going to do a demonstration of what we can do as a standard strategy. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hits. Phase 1, and then phase 2, we want to take out the egg. Okay, so that's roughly the idea of what we have with the fight. So 5 charged hits on the chicken, and then we need to deliver 2.5 hits in phase 2 on the egg. So 2 charged up shots and 1 standard shot. We do have a much more efficient method, so we'll go over to that one where we use our bat assault ability. Okay, so we're there. Gonna make a save there. And then switch. Oops, and we missed in that second phase. But what we're looking for with the timing of our bat ability, so the chicken's iframes are a little bit shorter than other enemies, so that will give an advantage to be able to hit the chicken twice with the bat assault ability. So to find the timing, you can either go by a sound cue with the music that you hear, or you can go with a visual cue with the chicken dipping down. I think a lot of the time I went by the visual cue, although I have tried to start using the sound cue a lot more to make that ability stick, to make that ability work. And then with phase 2, similar to the first stage boss, the idea is we want to take out the egg before it lands. Okay, and then 1, 2, 3. And ideally, that's how the boss fight should work out. And with that, we'll then go on to stage 4. Going to stage 4, again, we have another cutscene. So we now inherit our 5th ability. It's our 5th? Yeah, it's our 5th ability. So this is our Sakasa, which is our flipping ability, our upside down ability. Just be careful with this ability, because if there is no roof to the ceiling, Kid Drac can die, similar to fall damage. So instead of falling down, yeah, instead of a fall down death, it's a fall up death. We have a new ability, and what we'll then do is we'll do our double A press to get through the first bit of text for the minigame, down twice, and we'll get into stage 4, which will take us onto the ship. 1, 2, down, down. And onto the boat. So we'll start with the normal ability. Just walk across. This enemy will go over the top of our head. We can jump up. As we get close to this edge, we'll jump, walk, jump, jump, fire. And we're going to jump, release our ability. We'll also buffer for another attack. We'll do a small jump here, hit, jump, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is very important before we transition into the next section. So we're going from outside the boat to inside the boat. Just before we go inside, we want to hit select 4 times. So we switch to our upside down ability, and that way we're ready to buffer it for the next section, because the next section we will need to start flipping upside down to go through different sections. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we'll continue to the next section. So we're holding down B immediately to buffer. I've switched from my piano grip just to my standard grip. So we're going to buffer for our upside down ability, and we're going to use this ability several times in this section. Coming up, we are going to encounter a couple of Richards. So it's a combination of Richards, falling platforms, and barrels. So we're going to jump here. So when we hit select with our upside down ability, it will cancel it instead of switching it straight to another ability. So this is going to be very handy. This is something that the NES version doesn't do with this. So let's go back to we'll go back to the beginning of that section, and we'll put that together again. Okay, so we buffer, jump. We're going to hit select to cancel, jump and fire, jump, select again, jump and fire, buffer, jump. We do a little jump here, select to drop, jump and fire, quick jump to there, just walk across, and we're going to jump and hit select, and keep walking from there. This section takes a bit of practice to just to trust what's going on. What we need to make sure, especially the fourth, I think it's the fourth crusher, so just making sure that we just walk across. You don't need to worry about jumping that little gap there, just walk across. Kid Drac will get across that just fine. If you do jump, because you do lose a little bit of horizontal walking speed with the jump, you will end up being out of sequence, and when you drop from the ceiling, you'll end up landing on the headless Richard underneath you. Going into the next screen, we want to have 3 hearts of health. So we want to make sure that we don't take damage. If we do take damage, we do have a backup that we can use, which could also be a standard strategy as well. But that's the first part of inside the ship. Now go to the second section of being inside the ship. We still want to have the upside down ability. That's not going to change. So going into this section, we want to buffer again. And going into the next section, we are going to have flippy platforms. So we hit that. So these are very important to make note of, because you can flip through these either by jumping on top of them or jumping underneath them if you have the upside down ability, which we will encounter. So we want to fall through the first one, and then after this we want to flip upside down onto the little ceiling that is just to the right of Kid Drac, right there, and we want to walk across, and then we're going to have a look at that little bit right there. So we've got this clever little flick, the little switch flick from left to right. So we're going to walk to the right, we're going to fall up through the hole. And as we fall up, we want to quickly flick left and then right. We can't hold to the right because if we are holding to the right, we'll demonstrate what happens if we just hold to the right and just fall through the hole as standard. So we fall through the gap, flip upside down. If we hold right, this is what happens. We'll end up crashing into the turret. Just as we enter that gap, we want to flick left and then right. So as we flick from left to right, we will then avoid the turret and we'll have enough time to escape the projectile. If there's a slight hesitation, we will get hit by that projectile, and that's going to cause the next sequence to go out of whack. Okay. So even if we're slightly out, if we've taken a little bit of damage or had a slight hesitation to get through the gap, that projectile will still get fired. So the idea is we want to avoid that projectile from being fired from that enemy at all. So through the gap, upside down, left, right, cancel to fall on there, buffer, good. Okay, and this will take us across our next lot of flippy platforms. We want to get to the last section of flip platform, and this will be a little bit of timing practice. So we want to be able to jump, land up on the underside of the final flippy platform. We get flipped through, and we want to hit select while we're still holding to the right to get through the last bit of platform. This can be a little bit tricky to begin with. So going across, jump. Okay, if you nail it as well as that, the platform won't flip again. Chances are you'll probably go a little bit higher, you'll land back on the platform, and it will flip around again. As long as you're holding down to the right, you'll be fine right there. That won't be an issue whatsoever. And then the next bit will give us a couple of options. A general option that I saw being used a lot, and I think it was on the basis of what the Taz was doing, you would quickly switch to normal weapon, do a charge shot to take out the next charging enemy. So we've got one underneath us, but we have another one in this above section to the right. So we'll do that, and after we take it out, we then need to mash back to upside down. So we have to hit that. So again, the select button 4 times. Press the B button to buffer, because we've got some more spikes that we need to avoid, that we need to clear out. So we'll do it the Taz way, and then I'll show the method that I used. So we switch, fire, 1, 2, 3, 4. Get across to there, and then I'll show what happens, what we do after that. So if we go to my method, okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to flip upside down, flick left and right. Okay, so it's very important that we do that little left-right flick after we take the damage, because if we're holding down to the right, what will happen is the enemy is going to be stuck on top of us, and I'll just quickly do that as a demonstration. So we jump through. If we hold right, you can see now the enemy staying on top of us. So we want to fool that enemy. So the idea is after we take damage, we're going to hold briefly to the left, and then just switch back, and then so hold briefly left, switch back to the right, and the enemy's going to continue going off to the left side of the screen. So we'll do that again. Jump. Left, right, and he's taken off. And then when we get to, this little bit in the background, I've gone a little bit too far there, but there's a little texture that Kid Drax just approached, that sort of wood plank background. When we get to the edge of it, that's when we want to cancel our ability while we're holding down right. That'll allow us to fall onto the flip platform. It'll flip us through, and we'll bypass the enemy that's moving to the left underneath us. We won't take damage from it. Okay, flick left, right, and then we approach these planks and we hit it there. And I'm going to hit, and it's very important, I hit select a second time to switch the sub-weapon over to normal, so that way we're ready to go into the next screen. And by doing so, I can then buffer. So it's very handy to to buffer my attack to get ready for the next boss, which will be a 2-phase fight. So we're buffering our attack, and then we're going to use 3.5s to take out the witch. So the trick to this boss is to anticipate where they're moving to next. So we don't want to stand directly underneath the witch to begin with. We want to be standing to a bit to the right of it, a bit to the right of her. So as the witch is moving across, we can fire a projectile once. After that, we can get a little jump to buffer another attack. So we're moving into the next position as the witch comes out of iframes. Hit it a second time, and then we can hit it a third time with another buffered attack, and then just a standard projectile. If we get a little bit out of sequence, we can always make it, so for example, it's very easy to hit it with a buffered attack and then a standard attack. If we fire a little bit too soon, you still have enough time to be able to hit the witch with 2 more buffered attacks after that. And probably the other thing as well is just make sure that you don't jump too high. Just a little pop jump will do the trick to continue across the screen to avoid taking damage from the witch, unnecessary damage. So going into phase 2, phase 2 is going to be the robot phase. We need the upside down ability for this, otherwise we're not going to be able to deal damage. And ideally we want to go into this phase with at least 2 health. So you could possibly go in with 3 health if you're using the strategy to take out that last charging enemy in the previous section. But if you're doing the damage boost like I do, you'll want to make sure you have the 2 points of health, simply because the first attack from the robot can sometimes be a little bit random. But we're going to try to make it as less random as possible. So let's have a look at what happens next. So we're going to get in position. So if we stand roughly there, so the left foot being mainly above that second heart at the bottom of the screen, we'll be in a sufficient position to be able to take out the robot as it appears. So we want to flip up to the ceiling just after the second leg lands, and hopefully with that timing we will get an arm attack and not a laser attack, and we'll have enough time to be able to fire projectiles. And we want to mash these as much as possible. Go, and we just mash. There's the arm attack. Get a few more in, hold down to buffer, switch back up. And that's a pretty good fight. So if the timing is really good, you'll hit the robot before it has a chance to take a step backwards. The timing can be a little bit tight, but ideally you want to finish taking out the robot before it delivers another attack, going all the way back to the left side of the screen. So sometimes you might end up going a little bit earlier like that. And nope. Okay, we were lucky that time. We got another arm attack. Okay, but let's say you got hit by a laser. You just want to get back up to the top of the screen as soon as possible. The laser will deal one point of damage. If you're not so sure about, if you're on 1 point of health and you want to avoid the laser attack, I'm just trying to think what you could possibly do. So there seems to be a much more ideal position. So roughly having Drax front foot above the third heart, and yeah, if you end up having a laser attack that's fired at you, there is the possibility of jumping that attack. Unfortunately, I'm not able to get a laser attack to spawn on this robot tonight, but it does give you the best opportunity to be able to avoid that if you are on 1 health. And chances are, if you are on 1 health going into this part of the fight, going into phase 2, you'll most likely get a laser. Just that always seemed to happen to me on runs. But you can jump that laser up while upside down. You will lose a little bit of time, but not as much. A little bit of time and a little bit of uptime of damage on the boss, but not as much as taking a hit from the boss. Especially if you're just on one point of health. But that's all that there is to that stage really, and to that boss fight. we get our next ability, which will be our last ability that we pick up, which is our explosive attack. And this is our most powerful attack that we can use. It has the ability to destroy blocks and absolutely kick ass. Okay, explosive block. Doesn't get a chance to show what it does to enemies, but it does a lot of damage. But again, we can skip that. Because we're halfway through the game, we have a longer cutscene that we need to skip. So I think we've got to mash start 4 times. So I've got 1, 2. Oh, sorry. There is one other ability. I forgot. The umbrella. And the umbrella is going to be very, very important when we go into stages 6 and 8. So we'll skip the cutscene for the explosive ability, for the first part of Conversation with Death, for the umbrella, and then another one. So then Death again. Minigame, smash A quickly twice, and then scroll down twice, and that'll take us to stage 5. Down, down. And now we get on the space elevator for the next section. So at the beginning of stage 5, we've got a health pickup immediately to the right. Pick it up. It's worth getting. The only time I haven't really picked it up is if I'm noticing on splits I'm really well behind time and just want to optimize that a little bit further. But that 1 second to pick up this extra point of health is absolutely worth it. You only get this in the JP version. You won't get this in the US version. So yeah, might as well pick it up, and then we'll do our elevator journey. Okay. Now, the trick to this section, we want to, because it is it's a vertical auto scroller. We want to try to save frames where we can, and the most ideal way seems to be where we are holding down. So holding on down and jumping up as we go along from platform to platform. On the way up, we're going to have 5 enemies to take out. So we'll have 3 robots and 2. We'll call them 2 astronauts. Okay, so jump. Probably not the most ideal way to do that to begin with. Okay, jump there, take out the first robot. Take out the second one. And we have 1 more to take out up here. And then 2 astronauts. There's the first one. Our second one. That jump I normally don't crouch for, simply because it's very easy to fall off. And we're at the top of the elevator. Again, it's a sequence that you'll learn, especially if you're new to the game. Plays a little bit different when you're trying to do the crouch, when you're trying to do the crouch jumps. So it can take that little bit more time, but if it saves that extra little bit of time on the stage, it's definitely worth it. That's phase 1 of the stage, and then phase 2 we get to the top of the lift, and it's just all about spaceships and aliens. So what we'll do is we will switch to our explosive ability, like so, and we're not going to worry too much about the spaceships. We'll just worry about dealing with the aliens. We'll have 2 dropping down from the right side and 2 from the left side. Okay, so we have 1, 2, and then from the left side, 1, 2, and always like taking out those last 2 spaceships floating in from the right. I don't know if it saves time. It might save a little bit of time in transition, So just a good opportunity. We can get rid of those. And when you fire your last shot to take out the last spaceship, you can hold down the B button to buffer your attack. And we'll be doing that as we go into the next boss, which will be Mecha Garamoth. So we need 8 hits. So the 8 hits that we need to deliver, so 4 from the start, we will have a jump attack that goes into Mecha Garamoth's helmet. Then we want to fire a vertical projectile that he's going to collect in the face on the way through the air. And then we want to fire a standing projectile to the left as he reaches the ground. We will duck the laser that gets fired at the same time we're charging another shot. As soon as the last bit of the laser goes over us, we will release that shot and we will buffer another one to get ready for our 5th attack. And we'll show the first half of that again. So we have 1, 2, 3, duck, 4. After we release that 4th attack, move a little bit to the right, so we give ourselves enough space. Flick back to the left, and fire that shot into Mecha Garamoth. Garamoth is then going to jump over the top of us. After he's reached the peak of his jump, the arc of his jump, and is going on the descent, that'll be the time to fire a shot underneath. So that way, the explosive arc where our ability impacts will cause Garamoth, as his head falls through the arc, he will take damage, or through that circumference. So the circumference of the explosive attack always deals full damage, even if it's not on impact. As long as that is up, if the enemy is standing in it or makes contact with it, it will take full damage from that ability, from that attack, and we can really use that to our advantage with different enemies and with different bosses, which is fine. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's our 8 hits, and we've got Garamoth in a really good position to the right side of the screen, so we can either stand all the way to the right side or a little bit to the left. It doesn't really matter too much, but what Garamoth will do instantly, so we'll take a bit of damage, but we don't have to worry about waiting for Garamoth to walk across the screen before jumping, which is what he will normally do. So we'll do this as a demonstration. So normally you'll have to make him walk across before he jumps. That's going to take time. We don't want Garamoth to do that, so instead we're just going to stand on top of him. And ends up jumping on the spot. 1. And while it seems simple enough, those 2 attacks of hitting the alien in the suit, it's very easy to miss if you get your height incorrect. If you go a little bit too high, the projectile goes over the top. A little bit too low, it hits the suit, and the circumference of the explosion won't hit anywhere near the head, which is really unfortunate. So you've only got a tiny bit of leeway to hit this creature that's inside the suit, and once it's done, we have a very small phase 3, which is basically where the creature jumps out of the suit, and we just need to one-shot it with our explosive. You won't be able to hit the creature immediately with your explosive, but at the same time you will still take damage. So if you are for some reason down to 1 point of health left on this boss, make sure you're not too close, and certainly not in the path of where the creature's going to be jumping out and landing. Okay, so we can hit the creature a little bit earlier. We don't have to wait till it reaches the ground, but if you hit the creature mid-air, you can do enough to stall it, and the circumference will then deal the damage once it comes out of iframes. Make sure to pick up the coin at the end. If you don't pick up the coin and leave it standing there, you're going to be losing time as a result. And we're out of that stage. Stage 6. So because we've got our abilities, we just need to skip the text with the minigame. So again, as soon as the screen comes up, mash A twice to quickly have the text appear, down twice, and we get to our next menu. And we go into stage 6. So sub-weapons and sequencing for this stage. This is where it starts to get a bit more interesting with the run now. So immediately at the start of this run, when we enter the stage, we're going to mash select 5 times. So we want to get to our upside down ability. And we want to try to do this, if we can, on the move. With control, it can be a little bit challenging, but I found there was a pretty good sequence I could use. So as I'm moving across, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I end up using my thumb to jump, and then I roll, and then end up rolling across to fire my projectile to deal with an enemy. So this is going to be all about timing. So again, there'll be practice involved to find the timing to begin with. So let's get into the stage. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, jump, fire and buffer, jump, release, then jump and fire, 1, 2, fire there, jump and release, jump, and then we drop down to here. Okay, and that's our sequence for the first section, which will then take us up to this next little enemy. So there's another interesting way I've seen other people do this first section. I prefer this method because I find I do progress a bit further along the screen, and it's very quick to recover and get back into our upside down ability to get ready for the next section. The next little bit is going to be an important sequence with ordering our abilities. But what we want to do is, after we land on this platform here, we want to jump. At the same time as we jump, this little angry flame should be jumping out of the lava. We should be able to hit it with a projectile. Be able to jump onto the next platform, and then it's very important when we jump onto the next platform, we want to do an attack jump. So we don't want to do a jump attack, but do the reverse. Do an attack jump, and what this ends up doing to the next little bit of lava, it causes it to slightly stall in sequence. So we get to move a little bit further along. So I'll show what happens as a result. It's timing. Hit it there. Fires, drop. Good, jump. There we go. And then jump. Okay, so what's happened there is I've just negated that section, so I'm able to get through a little bit quicker rather than waiting for the three quick firing shots of lava or arcs of lava. I was able to get through that section a little bit sooner. So to show what happens if I don't do that little buffering of that attack. Okay, so jump. And then, okay, so as you can see, we've taken 2 hits of damage there as a result when we've just completed a standard jump, or if you do a jump attack. But if you reverse after you land on that platform with an attack jump, for some reason it delays the sequence. Yeah. Also known as the runners. Yeah, well, it's not a reset at this point. If you end up with that sequence by accident, you can grab the health and continue on. So it doesn't kill the run, but this certainly speeds up the run if you get the sequence right. Right there. Okay, so then we do our drop, jump, and attack. Okay, that time it didn't work, so I think what didn't help was jumping and firing to try to hit that fireball. So so that possibly contributes to that little bit of delay as well. And then we drop. I'm probably going to take damage there, but we just end up continuing. And then get to there, 2, and we can jump at that point. So with good timing, you can, after the first arc, drop down, let the second arc fire over the top, and just as that is disappearing, you can then move across and make your jump to get past that third arc in that quick sequence, and that will then take us to our next screen. So once we get out of the lava screen, we then go to the umbrella screen. Word of warning going to the next section. So the next section is the umbrella section. In the Japanese version, the game will automatically, so if you're coming out of your upside down ability, you'll be immediately cycled onto your kasa ability, which is going to be your umbrella. So we can buffer going into the next screen to pull out our umbrella, and whenever we unfurl our umbrella, we do, similar to the bat ability, we do take a little bit of time as we transform, but in this case we're not transforming into a bat or an umbrella, we're just unfurling an umbrella. And we're going to do that just as we drop down to a little bit of ground level. So let's keep going. So we're already buffering. So drop, open it, and then we're going to duck and jump there. And then we're just going to keep walking to the right, take out the two little Kirin, little lions, take those out, and then one more, duck to the right, 1, 2, and as we reach the edge of the screen, we want to hit select to get our first rotation over to our next ability. So we change over to our normal ability, which means going to the next screen, leading us up to the boss. All we need to do now is hit the select button 3 more times as we switch back to our explosive ability, or sakuretsu if you're reading the Japanese, reading the hiragana. So we'll hold it right, and 1, 2, 3, jump. And we can fire down on both of those. After the second attack, you could hold down on the B button, so as we charge up to get ready to deliver our first attack when the next boss appears, which we are going to have a look at now. Okay, so we're going to have a look at the boss for stage 6, which is going to be the Kirin, our fire line. So you might remember, so if you've played the NES version, you might remember it's the first boss in as part of the boss rush in the last, or the final sequence of the Famicom version or the NES version. In that version, you have to use ice attacks to be able to deal damage. We don't have an ice ability, so instead we're just going to be using our explosive ability, which does a lot of damage. We want to deal with this boss preferably in 2 cycles. Our best case scenario, 6 hits in the first cycle and then 2 hits in the second cycle. Otherwise, a 5 and 5, or a 5 and 3, or a 4 and 4 will work out as well. We'll go into a demonstration first up, and we'll see what it does. So move across. Nope. Okay, so we had 3 attacks there. 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we had a 3 and 5, so we still had 2 cycles, which is good. 2 cycles should be the most that we go into for this boss. Where we go into, I guess you could say, the finishing phase. I won't call it the second phase because it's not really a second phase, but again, we don't want to take damage. He'll split off into multiple little Kirin, and those ones actually did a very quick job of just scarpering, just taking off. We just had to take out one, which would have probably taken the most amount of time to exit the screen. But when we get those little Kirin at the end, see if you can take them out with standard missiles. Try to avoid using explosive attacks, unless you can gather the coins after them really quickly. Again, if enemies leave a coin behind, the screen won't progress until those coins have been collected, just like what we had with the stage 5 boss. The timing for this fight in the first cycle, I go by a sound cue with the music, and there's almost like this little gap in the melody, which gives me an indication of when to release my attack. And after I release that first attack, it's all about watching for disappearing circles after that with the explosive ability. So once the first, because you can't fire another explosive attack, or you can't fire another special ability until the previous one has completed its cycle. We'll have a look at the timing to begin with. Okay. So we've got our silence, and then the first bit we've got this buddy dum, duddy dee doo doo, and so it's duddy dud. Yeah, so it's after the first three notes. There's a gap, and it's pretty much in that gap when we then release our explosive attack. Okay, and because I didn't quite wait for that explosive circle to disappear, I missed out on the third attack. So it's still got 5 in, which is a very good sequence. So it just means now going into the second cycle, I'll just use a jumping ability to fire across, and then I'll just have 2 explosive hits go into the right side of the divot that Kid Drac is standing on. 1, 2, 3. And that's not a bad fight to have. Ideally, if you want to get through this fight as quick as possible, you want to get 6 hits on the first cycle. So that way for second cycle, you don't have to worry about jumping into the little divot in the ground. You can be standing where Kid Drac is right now, have 1 explosive attack, hit the Kieran just as it becomes active again. After you fire that attack, buffer up the next one, jump over the top of the Kieran, and as you're at your peak, fire down, and that should end the fight. But the trick is to always, especially in the first cycle, always very quickly rebuffer for your next attack. If you're not rebuffering really quick, you're going to fall behind in the sequence. So it's a combination of rebuffer as soon as you can, but wait for the previous explosive circle to disappear before you can fire your next attack. Otherwise, you're going to miss that opportunity. I didn't have that in my 1854 run, but I have done that in previous runs, getting 6 hits first cycle and then 2 hits on the second cycle. If you're going for a really low top in this run and you do get that sequence, keep the run going, because yeah, you're going to be on a roll there. And hopefully fortune will serve you well going into stages 7 and stages 8, which we'll have a look at next. Okay, we have another animation sequence, or another mini game, I should say. So we skip that, and then we're onto stage 7. Stage 7, we are entering the mines as we approach the fortress for Garamoth. This can be one of the most technical sections as part of the run. So we're going to break it down bit by bit and have a look at the options that we have. But from the beginning, we are going to punch select 3 times to go straight onto our explosive ability, and we'll look at what we do from there. So, yeah, here we go. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, jump, fire, explosive attack going down, release an explosion there, 2, 3. That didn't work, that's okay, and keep going. And flip upside down. Okay, so we'll just have a look at that much to begin with, and we'll have a look at the variation of what we can do to get past the miner. So I end up using more of the Taz strategy, which is going for a jump where we don't take damage and land perfectly in that gap. It's very rare I end up landing in that gap. So we can either take the chance and then missing the gap, we take the damage off the enemy, or we can deliberately take damage from that enemy straight away. So that way, then with our iframes, we can be passing through that enemy a little bit closer to make that jump that little bit sooner. There is a safer variation of taking out that enemy, but it does take 1 extra. I think it takes 1 extra shot from memory. So I'd rather use just 4 explosive attacks rather than 5 to have to deal with that enemy. So we'll have a look at that variation. So 1, 2, 3, jump, fire, explosion, and then we can go down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's another way we can deal with it, but as I've pointed out, there is that one extra attack that we use to take out that enemy. It's up to you at the end of the day, what you feel more comfortable using, what you feel can be faster, or what risk or what chance you want to take with trying to get through that section a little bit quicker. So the other variation that I have, 2, 3, jump, fire, explosion, and 1, 2, 3, then deliberately take damage, and then walk through, which will then set us up for our next section. We'll have a look at this next section now as part of the sequence. So this will be essentially the second half, where we're looking at flipping upside down. So the first half is about explosions on this room. The second half is about the acrobatics. So 1, 2, 3. Explosive attack. And then 1, 2, 3. Take deliberate damage. 2. Very important not to release the button too early if you're above an open ceiling, because the ability won't work. So it never activates to flip you upside down if Kid Drac is standing directly under an open section above him. It must be platformed. Okay. And then we get to there. Jump. Deselect and buffer. Jump. And then when we jump here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's very important we have one select press to cancel our ability, and then we need to hit the button another 4 times after that to cycle through to our explosion. And we're on to the next section. We're going to buffer. And then we're going to do 1, 2, walk across. 1, 2, walk after the black block. 1, 2, and 1, 2. Okay, and then to there, and there. This is one of the most ideal sequences that you can use to get through this section. At first, when I worked on this, when I was working on this section, there was a lot more panic going into runs. So I'm actually working with a bit more structure and sequence now to use the fewest amount of explosive attacks as possible. So again, just so make sure that you rebuffer as soon as you can after an ability. You can't release your next attack until the explosive circumference has disappeared. So do wait for that. But let's break down what happens with the explosives in the next bit. So we buffer. Our first pylon is an ascending one, so we're going to hit it twice. So with the dark brick that's descending there, we want to hit the 2 grey bricks above it, and we want to hit that second brick just as there's still that last little bit of the black brick poking above the ground. And if the timing's good from that second attack, and especially if we buffer immediately after it, we can walk straight across and get to the next section of blocks, which are going to be our ascending blocks. So get 2 blocks, then 1, 2, and 1, 2, hit 1 there, and we can walk through. So we end up exploding 5 blocks. So 2 nearby, 1 far, and the 4th one will be the lower nearby block, which we crouch for, and then we jump and hit the 5th block. So 3 and 2, and we should be able to walk through, and then that'll take us to our next section. So we want to jump up to the 4th block height, so you can see how many squares high the blocks are, and then jump again and hit the one above it as it descends, and we'll have this gradual descending gap, and we can use that gap then to be able to take out, we can either take out 3 blocks on the right side or 2 blocks. But we'll need to take out a 3rd block above us, above that as well, which will buy us time to be able to take out enough take out enough blocks on the right side and just to walk on through. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or actually, you could just do 4. You could just do 4 like that. So there we go. We've actually accidentally found a slightly more optimized way, so where we can just use 4 attacks. So that's actually that's probably going to be the fastest way to get through that. And then 1, 2. That was actually quite risky there to to do that, but yeah, you could possibly do that with 4 blocks. Probably safer to do it with 5, just to be on the safe side. Now we have ascending blocks on the left, still in the middle, and descending on the right. So similar to our previous sequence, 2 blocks. So we'll take out 2 blocks, then the lower one, an upper one. So ideally we want to take out 3 blocks on the ascending column, 3 on the standstill column, and then we can take out 2 on the descending column to let's get through that section. So 1, 2. So a little bit behind in the sequence there, so sometimes you just got to make up that time. The most important thing is not, okay, the most important thing is just to relax. You can recover the rotation, just make sure, the most important thing, just make sure you are rebuffering your ability. As long as you're rebuffering your explosive ability, you can regain control with the blocks, and at the end of the day, it's better to play that little bit safe. Yes, you'll lose time, you might lose a run, but I'd rather lose a run on a tiny bit of time than losing it to a death because I got squished between 2 columns. There we go. And 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Go through. And 1. Very important when you take out that first robot, see if you can do a full jump that skips the first step and just gets you straight into the second step to be able to walk through this section. So release the attack, rebuffer, and then, and yeah, just do that for all 3 robots. Okay, and that's going to take us up to our next section. So we'll look at the standard method that is traditionally used, and then we'll look at the method that I've been using, which can save anywhere between 3 to 4 seconds. It can save a good chunk of time, maybe even more. It'd be interesting to see the difference that it makes. First of all, the standard method. So we walk through, we get to here, we wait, jump, jump, and keep going through. That's where it gets a little bit risky. And then we keep going from there. And as long as you're holding right, you'll always make it the rest of the way through. So the traditional method was really chancy, really risky to do. But then there was a nice little fail-safe method using that sequence. So if we go from here, we can go across, and what we can do. So I've already got it prepared. So so my sub-weapon ability is the flipping ability. So this is very handy to have. So we can charge this, and we can flip upside down. So as soon as the ceiling is moving up, we can be holding down the right button, the right directional button, and we can just move across and then cancel it, and we'll have a much safer distance to get past the next gap rather than just trying to jump the steps. So we'll buffer it, flip, and then we'll release it. Get across to here, wait here, hold it again, flip, and we can go across, and we just need to make sure after that we go back to our explosive attack. What you can do to optimize it a little bit further, the second section that we progress through, where we land in the gap, there's a couple of blocks that we can take out. We can, especially the the further one to the right, but if you take out both, that's still pretty good as well. But taking out those blocks can allow us to move a little bit further to the right, so we save a tiny bit more time. But we're going to have a look at this other routine. With this other routine, this is a very risky technique. You have to be organized with button presses. It does take, again, as I've mentioned several times, it does take practice. So with this one, we're going to buffer and then activate our upside down ability. So we'll be doing it once we pass the gap that is just above Kid Drac to the right of screen. So we're going to flip upside down, and then as we're approaching the other side to be able to land on the ground, we're going to smash that sub-weapon button 5 times. So once to deactivate and 4 to get into explosive. We're going to stand into position underneath the first explosive block that will be above Kid Drac. Buffer, and as long as we're not standing too far to the right, side of this block, and certainly not too far back to the left, we should be able to explode this block, crouch, and be safe. And this is going to save us a very good amount of time. And if we're aware enough after that, if we're safe enough from there, we can switch back to our upside down ability. Jump, buffer, jump, and then so not quite far enough to the right side to be in that gap that's descending. So there we go. And because we can't just walk straight through underneath, we've got time where we can fire our ability to just fire our attack to buffer, and then once the ceiling is high enough, we can walk straight across, flip upside down, and then continue across to the right, which is what we're going to do right now. And then we can just flip off there, and we just continue across for the rest of the way. So instead of waiting 2 cycles to get through this section, we've only had to wait 1 cycle. And we're through. So the variation upon this is, if we don't have enough time to get to our flip ability, it's not the end of the world, and you won't miss another cycle. It may not be a time loss. If it is, it'll be incredibly minor. But we'll show the variation if you're not able to activate your upside down ability a second time. So we buffer, we go across. And that's a really good example of where we're just slightly too far across. There we go. So let's say we forget. We just walk across, bounce jump, and we're safe. So we only lose maybe a tiny amount of time because we didn't flip upside down. Okay, and that will then take us to the boss for stage 7. Let's have a look at what this robot does. So we buffer our attack. And in order to hit this boss, we need to push the blocks across to the right. So for those that aren't familiar with how this boss works, so there are different sequences you can use. I prefer to do a jump for my first one, and then hit the robot with two low blocks. You can come up with a sequence. The idea is we need to hit this robot with 6 or 7 attacks. I can't remember how many it is exactly, but we want to push it out of that first phase into phase 2. Once you've reached the required attacks, any further attacks won't put you ahead in damage. After that, we need another 5 attacks. Whatever you do, don't stand above that third block on your side, that light grey block, and fire down with an explosive attack. You will fall through the floor if you if you take it out and you fall through the gap. I have done that on one run. That was a little bit embarrassing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, it took a little bit more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and that's phase 2 of that fight. So we'll have a look at how we can ideally take out the boss. So I'd like to hit the third block and then 2 low. 1, 2. That was a little bit of a different sequence, but normally you hit it with the third block, you hit 2 low, then hit it with 2 low ones, jumps up in the air, hit it with another 2 low ones, jumps in the air, and then hit it with 1 or 2 more blocks, and it goes into the next phase. I try to get ahead on that first attempt, and that didn't work. So it's a little bit hard to pick what is the most ideal sequence to use. Jump 1, 2, and 1, 2, and then 1, 2. That's supposed to hit sooner, and then hit on the way up. It's 5 hits in the second phase, but you want to hit 2 gradual ascending attacks. Your third and fourth ones, you should be able to hit the second block from the top. After those third and fourth attacks, make sure you move below that height, because then the robot's going to be attacking you at that height. And if you hit the third block from the top as your final attack, that will take out the robot very quickly in phase 2. Get that buffered attack. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's fine if you take a bit of damage on the way down. As long as you're not sitting on 1 HP, you'll take out the stage 7 boss, and we can finally go on to stage 8, the final stage of this run. We have one final screen, so again, tap A twice, down, down, and now stage 8. So we are going to have the diagonal order scroller, the elevators, and then I guess we'll call it the factory. We'll mention what comes up to there. Okay, so we get straight into stage 8. And immediately we want to hit select 4 times. As I mentioned at the beginning of the run, we only use the bat ability a limited amount of times. This is essentially the third room that we use the bat ability for. So there are 2 ways that we can approach this first bit. So either way, we are going to be jumping up to this highest platform. We'll show first of all the standard attack that we can use. This is usually what I'll use in a run now. You only lose a tiny bit of time. So we get there, hit, and then we're going to use our bat ability when we pretty much get to the corner of that platform, and then we're going to descend to the right. And our aim is to continue moving to the right. There'll only be some occasions where we need to hold up, but the idea is we just want to keep moving to the right as much as possible. So the variation for this is we jump here, walk across. And there's our variation right there. It's a little bit trickier for timing, but okay, that's actually a really good sequence right there. Where Kid Drac spawns into a bat will have an influence in terms of when enemies appear on screen and how they move across. So that was actually really good fortune, where a lot more of the enemies were just like, no, we're not going to the left, we're going to the right side instead, which just opens up the perfect clear path to be able to cut through. We won't always get that though. Let's see if we can get we get a variation from this one. So if we do that one, and that's actually a really good example of where I need to wait in that case for that sequence. So that was a bit unlucky that time, but it's playing on its merits. Is one of those areas where it's trial and error, learning to read the situations and when to go for the timing. That was definitely not good timing, and if we're not moving quick enough, then we get squashed from above. So we want to go that a little bit earlier. escape underneath. There we go. Again, really fortunate with timing. Sometimes you just got to wait to go down that extra step. It can be a difficult section to judge sometimes. The only thing that we need to worry about after this is dealing with the 4 robots. So you can either jump over them, or if you're quick enough to cycle through your sub menu as you approach this section, you can switch to your explosive ability and be able to do a low enough jump going above them to have the explosive ability take them out, and it's just one explosive shot will take them out. And very important, before you get to the next screen, switch back to your bat ability. Even if you miss it, it's not the end of the world. It just means that you missed that opportunity to be able to buffer before going on to the next screen. You can possibly weave your way through trying to avoid the spikes, but it's going to take more time. So if you're doing the speedrun of this, and this is what the guide's designed for, go for the bat, because the bat will be the fastest way to get through that section. So we're going to look at the bat now for the elevators. Okay, so transform there, change out, switch back and forth, middle, transform, gradually ascend, change out, there we go, avoid those spikes, change out here, hold hard left, change out, and then we want to stay in bat form for those two, and ideally we make it to the next platform section. So again, if it doesn't quite work, we can change out and in, and then this will be our final elevator. Okay, we're going to hold right and then down briefly. And it's very important we get that down press, because it does apply the brakes to our upwards movement towards the top. Sometimes if you're just holding right, and you get to the top, you can for some reason hit that spike. I don't know why, but it'll just do that to you for some reason. So there are some health pickups along the way. Again, it's a whole sequence to remember. It will take practice. Sometimes it can just muck up. Yeah, I'll get a clean run so then we can see how it works out as close to being as ideal as possible. Don't go too early, because otherwise you'll get spiked. Across, change out, change again. Hard left. And we should make the sequence. There we go. Change again. And we get to there. Switch our sub-weapon. So we go back to our explosive. Hard right. Briefly down. If you take damage, there's opportunity to pick up health along the way. You can get to the top of here with 3 health, and it can be fairly safe to get through. You can possibly get to the top with 2 health. 1 health can start to get really risky, especially going to the next section, since there is a little bit of RNG with one part in particular. So now we're into the factory section. So we've got screws that are randomly dropping. We can take a damage boost if we want to. Okay, and that'll be the last of the screws that drop in this particular section. We then get to the crab section, and the crab section can be a very important sequence. Just one little note with the screw section: you can take 1 or 2 damage boosts. I usually just take 1 if I've got enough health. If I've got 3 or 4 hearts of health. If I've got full health or I've just lost 1 bit of health, I'll take the damage boost from the second screw that's falling from the right side. So I'll avoid the first one, and then as I get to the second one, flick left and jump up, and it'll be a knockback that ends up being just a straight knock up that allows me to land flat on top of the screw and continue moving to the right side of the screen. But we'll have a look at the crab section. Okay, so let's put this sequence together. So this might not work. 4. I'd like to fire one there just to make sure one despawns. So that's the ideal sequence where we take out 4 in a row, and then where the 5th one would spawn, we don't have it appear. And if it doesn't appear, that's really good, because it is a little bit problematic in its height, in its positioning. Not the end of the world if it does end up showing up. But again, it's a sequence where you'll learn where to jump, where to anticipate with the different bits of platform that are going to be pushing up and pushing down throughout. So once we've gone past the factory, past the crabs, we then have some screws that we need to get past. So we'll have one that will go over our tops, over the top of our head to the left. The second screw is the one that we've got to watch out for, because sometimes the second screw that we approach can drop on top of it, on top of us, and there's nothing we can do about it except a quick reaction to try to damage boost and continue on through. It's not ideal, but it's the least we can do to get past that. Hopefully you don't have, hopefully you're not on your last point of health at that stage. So no panic whatsoever if you've got a couple of points of health left, or you've taken a damage boost or accidentally taken some extra damage. As long as you get past those screws, we can pick up that health right there. So then we get to what I call the Dorothy section. So we're going to meet Dorothy. Not this bit of platform that Drac is standing on, and not this one either, but the next bit along as we get to that long flat ceiling section. About halfway along, we're going to release a projectile that's about the same height as about head height with Drac. Get here, fire a shot. Okay, and we use 2 explosive shots to take out that Dorothy. So once Dorothy's out of the way, we then need to switch to our umbrella ability. So this will be in, I think it's 3 button presses as we go along. So we have 1, 2, 3. Yep. So we'll switch to it in 3 button presses. And then what we'll do is we'll do a jump and attack to buffer, and then jump and release to unfurl our umbrella. As long as you're standing roughly this far along, you could stand a little bit further to the right if you wanted to. Our umbrella ability is going to be able to block the next lot of attacks that come from the next section of enemies, or the platforms above. And once we walk through, we finally made it to the final boss. So we have made it to Garamoth. So first of all, we are going to make sure that we put away our umbrella. I don't think that it doesn't really matter too much when it comes to timing. You're going to lose a little bit of time with packing away the umbrella anyway. And we want to switch back to our explosive ability. I like to stand a little bit left of the center, it's just what I'm comfortable with positioning. If you prefer his movement starting off to the right side, you can do that as well if you want. So whatever you feel most comfortable doing. It mirrors either way. So we fired a buffer, and then all that we're going to do is we're going to follow directly under Garamoth. He's going to start moving off to the left side, and then as he's moving over to the right side, he'll then start to fire out some lightning. We just got to stay between the lightning bolts as he moves across the screen. What we're going to have a look at next, this is where we get to the next bit with dealing damage in phase 1. After that double lightning strike, he's then going to shoot a single diagonal arc that goes across. After that, he's going to be firing a fireball out of his mouth directly down. When Garamoth has his mouth open, that is going to be our time to attack him. I'm going to get Drac's left foot to be about halfway over this lighter section of the ground. This should provide a safe spot, and we're going to aim to get 4 attacks to hit Garamoth. The first attack is going to be basically the aftermath of the explosion. So the circumference of the explosion should hang around just long enough when Garamoth opens his mouth. He's going to take 1 hit of damage from that, and then after that we're going to jump attack with another 3 explosive attacks. So we need to hit him with 5 attacks to get out of phase 1. Ideally we want 4 attacks on the first cycle, and then when he shoots lightning out of his other hand, we'll look at where we position for that. We only want 1 attack after that. Otherwise a 3 and 2 or a 2 and 3 is fine. Ideally you don't want to go into a second cycle of this phase, because you're going to lose a large amount of time as a result. So we follow Garamoth along. Stay between the lightning. Stay slightly to the right side. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our 4 attacks. And then over here. There we go. And we're out of phase 1. With good timing, you can have 4 attacks on the first half of that cycle, and then just 1 attack to deliver, which will be a little bit faster compared to doing the 3-2. Going into phase 2, it's going to be a different sequence. We need to deliver again another 5 attacks. Garamoth is going to hit the ground, and he's going to be jumping from side to side. Only when Garamoth reaches the very edge of the screen is he actually going to do a super jump over the top of Dracula and have his mouth open. We can do this in 2 large jumps of his. So 3 hits on the first large jump, and then 2 hits on the second large jump. So the hardest part of this this sequence, and I know I didn't get the best jump sequence in my 1854 run. The first jump in phase 2, and unfortunately, if you're going for a really fast time, this can sometimes be the difference between getting a PB and not getting a PB. So I'm going to move Kid Drac to not all the way to the left side of the screen, but a fair way across, and I'm going to try to have him jump in the air just as Garamoth is getting towards the ground, and we're going to try to manipulate Garamoth to do a large jump that will take him all the way to the left side of the screen to begin with. And we get it. We take damage there. Another bit of damage. And there's our 5 hits. So that is very close to what an ideal sequence should look like for the second phase of this fight. So we want to manipulate, try to manipulate Garamoth into that large jump to the left side of the screen, which we did in this case. Then, with good timing, we want to do a high jump. We've got our attack buffered. We want to fire at Garamoth's head. It's going to strike against his head and cause the explosion with the circumference. Because he's on the edge of the screen, if that stays up long enough, when he jumps through it, with his mouth open, he'll take 1 damage from that. We then want to hit Garamoth once in the air as he's moving across. So we can do that with a jump to the right while firing upwards. And after we release that attack, we want to rebuffer. So we want to press the button down again. And as he is going to land on the right side, we don't want to jump up again. This was a mistake that I previously made. We don't want to jump up. We just want to walk across, aim up, and release the attack. And as he's falling down on the right side, that attack should hit him for a 3rd time. You will take damage. That's not an issue whatsoever. I know this is not the best example of a save file with 5 hearts of health, but you can even do this with 3 hearts of health if you haven't picked up any health upgrades. But then after those 3 hits, your last 2 hits are going to be of a similar sequence: jump and fire high into Garamoth's head on the side of the screen. So as he goes to jump, his mouth being open will go through the circumference that's left over from the explosive attack, and then just 1 more attack straight into the air. So we buffer, jump. So this is a really good example of where we don't get the larger jump, we get the smaller jump instead. So if you see that, just move to the left side. Don't try to run through, because then it could be followed up by another small jump. So from this jump, you're guaranteed it will be an edge of the screen jump, whether he does another small jump to the left, or does a larger jump to the right side. So at least you can guarantee the next jump's going to be large. There we go. 1, 2, 3. We'll take damage again. And 1, 2. And there's our ideal attacks to finish it off. You can't guarantee that you'll always get that larger jump at the beginning of phase 2. We did that time. Okay, now we missed 1 hit there, so we've got to get 3. 1, 2, and at least as part of that backup, it's a case of because I only got 2 hits in that first cycle, I only get 3 in this one now. And yeah, that's all that we need to do. And on that final attack, that's when the timer stops. And hopefully if you're having a look at this guide, you'll be willing to take on this run. All the best to you if you do. It is a fun run. I've really enjoyed running this game, especially across the 4 Castlevania titles for the Game Boy. This one I've pretty much enjoyed this as much as Belmont's Revenge. I still favor Belmont's Revenge is still a personal favorite of mine. But at least with with Kid Dracula, it's a unique game in its own right. It's definitely worthy of being recognized as a Castlevania title, and it's a lot of fun. It's a different slant on the game, on the series of games, and it plays really well. I've enjoyed it as a regular playthrough, but probably more so as a speed run as well. It's felt very rewarding to be able to play through and to be able to complete. But that is my guide done for Kid Drac. So thank you for watching it, and all the best to you as you chase your own run, chase your own time, especially if you're chasing for the 18.4x. So good luck to you if you are going to be doing that.